Elder Joseph F. Smith briefly referred to the recent mission of himself and Elder Orson Pratt to the States. He related some of the terrible effects of the recent cyclone which had just before their visit passed over the country. Some of the fearful consequences of it were seen in the town of Richmond, Missouri, and in the very place where Parley P. Pratt, many years ago, was a prisoner for the gospel's sake. The place of his confinement was utterly swept away. They also visited Independence, Missouri, and examined the very spot which God designated to his servant Joseph Smith many years ago for a temple. The ground which was purchased for this purpose was entirely barren, without a green leaf that he could gather as a souvenir of the visit. They also had an interview with William E. McClellan, one of the first council of the 12 apostles, who apostatized from the church a great many years ago, and who believed in the mission of Joseph up to the time of his own apostasy. He then said the chief object of their mission east was to obtain, if possible, some dates and facts that pertain to the early history of the church, which, for want of more correct records in that early day, were lacking, supposing that some things might be gleaned from the old settlers still living in the neighborhood, but they found no one who would give them any information, or who knew as much as ourselves on these matters. They called upon his cousin, Joseph Smith, and had some conversation with him about what is called the inspired translation of the Bible by the prophet Joseph Smith. The speaker was well satisfied that the book so published is only a partial translation by the prophet, and merely contains the translation of King James, with some changes in the 1st chapter of Genesis and the 24th chapter of Matthew, which had been published by this church in the Pearl of Great Price many years ago. They also had the privilege of visiting the temple in Kirtland and the hill Cumorah, besides preaching the gospel where opportunity offered. The entire account of their visit and experience while east has been written and placed in the possession of President John Taylor. He then gave a faithful warning to the saints to continue in their faith, to build up Zion in every possible way, and said that God in his own time would bring forth those records which are now in the care of the angel. They would come forth to this people and to no other, and not to them until they were fully prepared to receive them. He closed by bearing a faithful testimony, not only to the truth of the work of God, but to the priesthood now held by the present leaders of the church.